this is the presentation of my PhD. I have just got my PhD at the University of São Paulo, and I would like to present the results. And this research was supervised by Dr. Astolfo Araujo, and my co-supervisor was Dr. Mercedes Okumura, who are co-authors of this presentation. So morphometrics is a method of morphological analysis aimed at the quantitative study of the variation in the shape and size of an organism. So works on geometric morphometrics applied to Brazilian material culture are fairly recent. They started about 15 years ago. Dr. Mercedes Okumura and Dr. Astolfo Araujo have been the only researchers applying morphometrics to Brazilian archaeology so far. Their research regards the application of 2D geometric morphometrics to lithic bifacial points from South and Southeastern Brazil. In this map of Brazil on the left, the central and northeastern portion of the country, painted in yellow, indicates the area covered by an archaeological culture identified as Itaparica tradition, which is composed of unifacial lithic artifacts known as lesmas. The other area in blue, to the south, represents another archaeological culture named Umbu tradition, which was defined in the 1960s and 70s by the presence of bifacial lithic points. Geometric morphometric studies conducted by Dr. Okumura and Dr. Araujo proposed the hypothesis that there were substantial differences in the shape of bifacial points associated with Umbu tradition between the southern and southeastern regions of Brazil. Results showed that points produced by groups from southeastern Brazil present a very distinct morphology comparing to points produced by southern groups. According to the authors, this clear variation in point morphologies may indicate a distinct regional identity shared by hunter-gatherer groups from the southeastern part only in regard to projectile point production. And the main conclusion is that Umbu tradition presents a more restricted range, both in chronological and spatial terms, than the one proposed so far. My PhD is a continuation of these previous works, but this time focused specifically on the state of São Paulo. This map of São Paulo shows the distribution of bifacial points and the unifacial tools studied. So the major aim of this research is to characterize the variability of shape and size of two classes of formal lithic artifacts, being bifacial points and unifacial tools of hunter-gatherer groups from São Paulo state, using 2D geometric morphometrics and traditional morphometrics. The idea is to explore the morphological diversity of points and unifacial artifacts between different regions of São Paulo state in order to establish a spatial correlation between shapes and sizes within the state and contribute to a better definition of the lithic industries of the hunter-gatherer groups that occupied the territory of São Paulo. So you see here an example of bifacial points and the unifacial tools, also known as scrapers. So for materials and methods, the digitization of projectile points was done using standardized photographs taken with the camera parallel to the specimen surface, with the distal end facing to the right. 5 landmarks and 5 semi-landmarks cover the geometry of half of the point, which is a technique frequently used to reduce data collection time in symmetric structures, as well as allowing the inclusion of fragmented specimens in the analysis. Then 2 landmarks and 14 semi-landmarks were added to cover the contour of the unifacial dorsal surface. And 2 landmarks and 7 semi-landmarks were positioned to cover the contour of the artifact profile. 5 regions of São Paulo state were defined according to its 6 river basins and then compared: north, center, south, and far east. For bifacial points, we applied GMM and traditional morphometrics to a total of 342 specimens. The unifacial tools analyzed belong to 4 regions: North, Center, South, and Far South, and we analyzed a sample of 268 artifacts. So we present the following results. Regarding the shape change, we see the PCA of shape coordinates, and the extreme shapes of each axis are illustrated. The PCA suggests that there is a considerable overlap among points from the 5 regions. The pattern of shape change is a difference in proportion between body and stem, which can indicate resharpening, and difference in width. The main features are a triangular, convex body, and an oblique straight shoulder and a convex stem. This box plot presents the centroid sizes of bifacial points for 5 regions. So it shows that the points from the north and center tend to be larger than the points from the south, far south, and far east. Also, points from north and center tend to present a greater range in variation in terms of size, including some outliers. Also, the results for linear measurements suggest the same difference in size. So we have, as the map shows, larger points in the north and center, and smaller points in the south and east. For unifacials, according to the PCA of shape coordinates, we also see a considerable overlap in terms of shape among unifacials from the 4 regions. However, the morphometric data also revealed some regional trends. So more elongated unifacials in the center and shorter and wider unifacials in the far south. The box plot presents the centroid sizes of unifacial tools for 4 regions. So the artifacts from the north, center, and south are larger than the ones from far south, and they also have a greater range of variation, including some outliers. Results for linear measurements suggest the same difference in size. So as the map shows, this is the coverage of unifacials in space in terms of size. Artifacts are larger in the north, center, and south, and smaller in the far south. So in conclusion, there is a strong overlap of shapes for both unifacial points and unifacial tools when comparing the different regions of São Paulo state. So while there is a considerable shape variability, one may find similar shapes between regions and within a region. However, it was possible to observe that the majority of unifacials in the central region tend to be thinner and more elongated ellipses, and the majority of unifacials in the far south tend to be wider and shorter ellipses. In terms of size, points are smaller in the south, far south, and east, and larger in the north and center. And unifacials are smaller in the far south and larger in the north, center, and south. Also, the morphological variation in bifacial points and unifacial tools in São Paulo suggests a relatively fluid process of cultural transmission with possible exchanges between neighboring regions and an absence of rigid shape standardization. The overlap of shapes across regions suggests a continuous flow of knowledge, while dimensional differences may reflect regional traditions sustained by local transmission networks. And lastly, the singularity of some contexts, such as in the Far East and Far South regions, suggests possible cultural distinctions or environmental influences in the observed variability. Thank you very much for your attention. And I thank also the agencies that gave me my doctoral scholarship and other projects that helped financing this research. Thank you very much.
Thank you.